I hope you're all feeling excited as I am for today's technical workshop. My name is Lana Abu Qalbain, as most of you know by now. And today's technical workshop will be delivered by Farnek, specifically by Muna Al-Nahdi, the Head of Sustainability and Consultancy. And it will be on COP28 Insights, Energy Transition for the Built Environment. Muna, the floor is all yours, but your your screen is a bit frozen. If you can hear me. Yes.
It's okay now?
I mean, the slideshow is okay,
but I wasn't moving.
But your video.
I'm still frozen.
The screen itself.
Is it still frozen?
It's fine. It's fine.
Let me turn.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. I hope all is well. So I think so far we have how many attendees, Lana?
12. 13. I mean, maybe they're getting more by the second.
We'll just 13. We'll just yeah. So let's just wait till 11:05, and then maybe we can start just to make sure everyone is here. Meanwhile, if you can share on the chat who you are or what company you're from, what is your expectations from today's sessions, it would be good just to get to know each other more and also to align with your expectations, inshallah. Let's see the chat.
I'm going to give access to Mr. Khalid, our chairman. I think maybe he wants to say something. I saw his hand up.
Mr. Khalid. Good morning, Lana. How are you?
Good morning. Alhamdulillah. Good.
We're excited to learn more about the insights for COP28. It's a great event that Emirates did, and I believe that we need to capitalize on it big time. So EGBC, with all its stakeholders, will continue to bank on it and capitalize on it. So we need everybody's cooperation also to make sure that we make it, it's not just an event that ended, but carry forward till the end. And thank you for hosting this.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Engineer Khalid. I totally agree. It's actually really important to take whatever points we discussed today forward, because that's the only way we can actually help each other to along the road to net zero, as I always say. It's a long journey, and that kind of collaborations, knowledge sharing, leveraging on expertise and strength of everyone is really important. I would be covering today maybe only 1 or 2% of what needs to be done as actions, but hopefully, as EGC has given us this floor, the Emirates Green Building Council, and I know that they're very active in the market, and decarbonizing the built environment is really a challenge. So it's important that we work together to identify what are the main obstacles, how we work around them, and how do we help each other in achieving that goal of net zero, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Looking forward.
If I may add to our attendees, I know you can type in the question box, not in the chat box. So please do so to introduce yourself. The other aspect is already understood from Muna. She's going to be engaging you throughout the presentation. So again, use the question box. But at the end, we will give access to whoever would like to ask questions to Muna. Just raise up your hand and I'll give you mic and camera access to state your question and just have a discussion with Muna, with whatever you feel like discussing together.
So I'll be actually, throughout the presentation, I will be asking a few questions. Please feel free to answer, because that's how we keep it engaging. And we also learn from each other's experience. Now, this is the first time, I'll be honest, I'm using this GoToWebinar. So I'm going to try to maneuver between the two platforms, the PowerPoint and to look at the chat and the answers. We'll try to keep it engaging. Okay, so let's start. I think it's it's about time. So just to give you a bit of an overview of who we are. So I'm actually representing Farnek today, a company that's been established in the UAE for more than 40 years. And under Farnek, I'm heading the Farnek sustainability. So we've been working all of these 40 years within the UAE context, within the region, to help in managing facilities and built environments in general. So just to give you a background of what we do, we actually focus on 4 verticals: energy management, carbon management, sustainability certification, and providing sustainability tools. And for me, I have more than 15 years of experience in energy, green buildings, and decarbonization. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any queries later on. I'm going to also drop my contacts in the chat or in the questions later on. So for today, inshallah, we'll go through a few. As I said, I'll be covering only 1%. I cannot cover all the COP28 insights. I'm going to give you a little bit on what was covered, what kind of pledges and commitments were made, especially with regards to energy transition. And then we'll go through why that energy transition is important, where in the UAE we stand today, and what are the goals and targets, because I think that's how we make it relevant also for the industry and give it the local context. And then also, what can we do to transition and decarbonize the built environment, especially during operations where we come as Farnek, or where our experience and case studies can be presented. So to start with, as I said, just like how I introduced myself, I would love to hear from you 3 things: your name, function, and organization, 1 word about you, and why are you here today. So we will keep this very short. So we'll give it only 5 minutes, because I think it's really important for community as well, sharing each other and knowing each other. So tell us who you are, and please. So I'm not sure if you have access anywhere. Should I check the chat box, or should I check the questions?
The questions.
Okay,
Yes.
No questions yet. Please try to at least tell me who you are if you don't want to answer the 3 questions. Just 1, who you are, which organization you're from, 1 word about you, and why you're here today. I mean, it's really important to understand why you're here today, because the topic that we're covering is quite big, and it helps me and to kind of either elaborate on some of the topics, or we keep them short and just give the high level information for maybe areas that you already know. Any answers? No?
Yes.
I think maybe, Lana, you will be seeing them. Are you seeing any answers?
Yes, I am. So we have
Okay,
Samiullah Khan, an individual member. We have Sheena Khan, who is from Terra Pavilion, Expo City Dubai. She's head of education programs. We have a bunch of different, like MEP coordinator from ALEC, Siam. Mehak, she's an engineer in sustainable solutions from Terrific Energy. And there's a bit about her, which is really nice. So she's here because she's curious to learn some insights. We also have Nadine Nabil, ALEC Fit Out Design Coordinator. Sheena from Expo is curious to hear what Farnek's clients are focusing on after COP28. And we have plenty more coming. So we have Iman Naragi, an individual, actually not individual, he's a corporate member from Urban Agritechs who do green walls. And he's curious to learn more about decarbonization efforts.
So as I said, the topic itself is quite huge. I hope that we cover some of these topics today, but we'd be more than happy to have follow-up sessions for some of the topics that are not covered or that not delved into much more deeper details as of today. So let's get into it then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we start with a few questions. So you will help me, Lana, in the answers, since I can't see the chat. So by 2030, let's test also whether you've been following what happened in COP28. There were 2 major commitments or pledges that were made related to energy transition, which includes energy efficiency and renewables. So the first one, by 2030, energy efficiency should be double triple, quadruple, or the same? Which one do you think is the right answer? And if you can help me with whoever answers first. If you can write in the chat, which one do you think is the right answer? What kind of a pledge was made during COP28 for improvements of energy efficiency? Should it be doubled, tripled? Yes, Lana?
We have answer for B, triple. We have another answer for double.
So the answer is double. Well done for whoever answered as double. So yes, it's double. And that's why we have an annual target of achieving that double efficiency improvement. So is this target 1% per annum, 2% per annum, 3% per annum, or 4% per annum? That could be a more difficult question, I hope.
We're still waiting for answers. So we have our first answer by Mehak. She says C, 3% per annum.
Okay. Any other answers?
Not yet. Oh, we have one. 4% by Sivigami. He or she, I'm sorry, say 4%.
Oh, it's correct. So I think this is wrong. That's a mistake on my side. I'm sorry. It should be 4% per annum. You're absolutely right. It used to be 2%, but now it should be 4% per annum. So whoever said 4% per annum, that's the right answer.
We have Sheena questioning if these targets are for the UAE.
And yes, Lana?
We have Sheena asking if these targets are for the UAE.
Not for the UAE. No, they're not for the UAE. This is from the COP28 website on what pledges were made during the COP28 globally. So these are not UAE. We'll go into the UAE context a little bit later, but these are overall targets from COP28. So if you go to the COP28 UAE website, you would see those kind of improvements. It used to be 2% per annum, but this was actually now doubled into 4% per annum. What about renewables? They should be double, triple, quadruple, or the same.
So we have answers saying B.
B, triple. Okay.
And there's three answers saying B. And if you don't mind, Muna, Sheena also asked, so all countries committed to the pledge. I think you touched upon that. And then Sivagami said Global Renewables and Energy Efficiency Pledge. I think that was the name of the pledge.
100%. Okay. He's absolutely right. That's good. So I think that the audience already knows these pledges. So we're not going to go into more insights because I think that's the majority of the pledges that were related to energy transition. Of course, there were a few things related to also fossil fuel and moving away from fossil fuels. And there were also a few pledges related to increase of hydrogen technologies and also investments and the energy transition. So that's going to open up a lot more topics. So what I thought is just let's keep it short, related to two important aspects of any energy transition for any organization, any country, or any building, which is energy efficiency plus renewables. And the question is, why do we even need this? Why do we need energy transition? Why do we need to achieve that energy transition? Well, and why is it vital for net zero? So to start with, you all know that there were a couple of commitments that were made for net zero, and this just shows you the global movement toward net zero. It's a bit outdated in terms of a graph. Now, this number has increased, especially post COP28, and that's why this movement is not limited to the UAE. For those who ask, no, it's a global movement towards improvement in energy efficiency, tripling renewables, and moving away from fossil fuel. So as per the data, now there are a couple of data, and the data is kind of diverse, but this graph is based on 2022 data, and it says that 73% of the global emissions today are coming from energy. And this energy is distributed between energy use in buildings, between transport, and energy use in industry. So if we were to achieve net zero by 2050, decarbonizing our energy sector or transitioning in a cleaner energy is really, really important. And I think most of the people here today also come from a from a buildings background, so you could see the magnitude of energy use in buildings with regards to the global emissions. Also, this number would vary. So, because I think the data sources vary, so please don't question the numbers a lot in terms of, I always keep the reference because I know there are a couple of numbers out there reflecting different databases. So the energy transition is really key for achieving net zero, because since 1992, we have had 60% increase in CO2 energy emissions, and 80% of our current energy is coming from fossil fuel. So the idea is to move away from fossil fuel and to transition into cleaner forms of energy by reducing demand and also reducing dependence on fossil fuels. This is just general information to give you a bit of an idea of what's happening around and what kind of scenarios countries are actually building to reach to 2020 to 2050 to have a proper energy transition. So a lot of them are focusing on buildings, focusing on also other energy utilization sectors like transport, bringing in new technologies, reducing demand, introducing hydrogen also as a viable option. And then by 2050, for example, here you could see the targets of really nearly, for example, 60% of transport met by electricity, 2/3 of residential dwellings fitted with heat pumps. Of course, this is not for the UAE, it's for a different, it's actually coming for the G7 group, and that shows you the scenario. So all these scenarios would be unique for each industry, will be unique for each country, and will be unique for even each organization. So let's delve deeper into energy transition in the UAE. So the UAE had actually an energy strategy that was updated post COP28. This just shows the journey that the UAE has had so far since 2017 in terms of launching of the energy strategy 2050, and then operating the first nuclear power. And then you could see here that in 2023 post COP28 we also have a new strategy the strategy was updated, and the target is to achieve net zero by 2050. So I'm going to be sharing with you some of the targets as part of the energy strategy in the UAE, focusing on the two main domains that we discussed earlier, which is renewable energy and energy efficiency. So this shows the major changes that made in the updated version. In the earlier version, the UAE was focusing a lot on the transformation of the energy sector in terms of diversification of energy use, and it wasn't properly aligned to the net zero targets. In the new version, though, the focus is now specific enablers to achieve 2050. And these include capital investment, they include also cost of generation, unit cost of generation, energy efficiency, and emissions reduction. So even in terms of a country, these strategies are being now or were updated following COP28. Policies and regulations are being revised. I think one of the major policies that came earlier than COP28 was, for example, RERA, when they published their energy efficiency policy for building owners or jointly owned owner association buildings. So we're seeing a lot of change in the market, in the industry, and also in the whole ecosystem to move away from fossil fuel or to actually enable the energy transition and the decarbonization, not only for the built environment, but for all other sectors as well. I'm going to share with you some of the targets and the plans as part of the UAE energy strategy. So you can see here grid emission factors. So part of the UAE net zero strategy is the grid decarbonization. So if you're building your own or energy transition for your organization, for example, or if you are helping someone to build their decarbonization plan, then you can take this into consideration. So we're looking at more than 48% of improvements in the grid emission factor through, of course, adoption of utility scale renewable energy sources and also nuclear. So you can see the current, this is on a UAE level, the current grid or as per 2021 was so for each kilowatt hour, the emission factor is 0.556 kilogram of CO2, but in 2030, it's going to come down into 0.27. So even, although I don't recommend that, but even if organizations or buildings are not doing much to improve just through utilization of a cleaner grid, then there will be some emissions reductions. Actually, a major chunk of emissions reductions will come from grid decarbonization. The second point is related to renewable energy. So also as part of the energy transition, the UAE is tripling its energy, renewable energy by 2030. And this just shows you some of the numbers, how it was in 2022, what is expected in 2025, which is the double. And then by 2030, you have 3 times of the renewable energy capacity in the UAE. And then when it comes to energy efficiency, I think the major elements here is the 40% reduction in energy consumption from energy intensive sectors in the UAE. So this is a kind of aggressive target, but I think it's an important target to align with. And as per the UAE National Energy Demand Management Program, we're looking at 42 to 45% as an average of energy efficiency improvements. Last but not least, what does this mean for buildings? Or what are the targets that are set for buildings? So there are a couple of elements or pillars when it comes to decarbonizing and energy transition for the building or for the built environment, including retrofitting of existing buildings, which is the majority, and reducing the consumption by 40%. And then we have implementing green building codes. So as you all are aware, UAE has multiple green building codes. If you look at Istidama in Abu Dhabi, or look at Safat in Dubai, so there are multiple building codes that are followed where energy efficiency and renewables are both either a mandatory requirement or a plus point. And then we have enhancing implementation, even from a government's perspective, they're looking at enhancing implementation of energy efficiency standards and rating systems for household appliances and equipment, and then driving generation also of distributed renewable sources, raising public awareness, which is really important because until today there are elements that are related to the energy strategy or the energy targets achievements that need the engagement of the public or engagement of, for example, your employees, your operators, your stakeholders, because without changes in behavior, without changes in processes, we will not be able to reach to achieve the net zero targets. And then again, increasing efficiency and reliance on recycled wastewater and landscape irrigation. So that's it for the UAE. So now let me just, because I don't prefer to go on and just speak by myself. I want to hear also from you. If any of you have already aligned or have developed a decarbonization plan for their organization or for their BET sector, and already have set targets for energy efficiency and renewables. So that's a question. Have you set any energy efficiency targets or renewable targets for your organization by 2030? Please drop the answers in the chat, and Lana, please, if you can help me.
Sure. So we have, though, a question from Samiullah wondering about the global and USA energy targets and how they compare to the UAE targets.
Honestly, I haven't looked at them, but maybe we could do that. We can do the research and look at it, because I felt that's so more important that we actually give the local context. There are so many targets. So if you look at the EU, they have their own targets. The US has their own targets. I really believe that each decarbonization plan and targets are very much unique to the industry, unique to the organization, and unique even to the country. The way we utilize energy is very different. The way we generate energy is very different. So comparing them is not going to be a fair comparison, apple to apple. So it's good to take the best practices internationally and then apply them. But that doesn't mean that our strategy, we cannot actually evaluate whether our strategy or their strategy is better. But I think the UAE has set very aggressive targets, honestly, and that's going to change the markets and the ecosystem in the following years, and we're already seeing that change.
Good way of putting it, Mona.
You can't even compare. Even we look at different buildings, because now we're talking about buildings. So you could have, for example, a big developer or a building owner could have multiple buildings, but each one of them could have a different function. So you cannot even compare a hotel to an office, because the operations are different, the dynamics are different, the customers are different. So I think it's only fair that we stop comparing, but look at what best practices we can learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. So we have Samiullah said that they're focusing on energy saving through retrofit and renewables.
Very nice. Okay. Any specific targets, Samiullah, that are set, for example, by 2030, like 30% reduction as per Dubai demand side management, or 42% as per the UAE energy strategy? Anything that you have set as a target, or you're just taking initiatives for the time being? No? So anyone else who can actually
In
provide
line,
input?
he says, in line with COP UAE strategy.
Okay, nice. Okay. Thank you, Samiullah, for your input. Anyone else would like to also share their input? So I'll tell you, for example, a few examples from some of our existing consultancy clients. Some have already set net zero commitments for scope 1 and 2 by 2050, which would include the, sorry, not 2050, by 2030, which means that their electricity usage or energy should be, especially whatever they control, like whatever that's under scope 1 and 2, which would be mostly electricity use and maybe some fuel for transportation and for on-site generation. A lot of companies have already set net zero, which means by then they would actually be achieving much more than the 40% reduction that we're talking about. So when we see best practice, again, some companies are very aggressive. They want to do decarbonize scope 1 and 2, which includes the electricity used for their assets. And with that, they could at least cover whatever they can control, and then look at scope 3 in the following years, like 2030 to 2050. So it all depends on how you want to look at it as an organization. For us, for example, in Farnek, we have committed to the SBTI, so we're following the SBTI targets. So by 2030, we need to achieve roughly 42% reduction in our emissions, and that includes scope 1, 2, 3. So you would say that at least, and at a minimum, we would be actually having more than 50 to 60%. We would need to achieve more than 50 to 60% reduction in our energy. So energy transition is really, really important in any decarbonization plan, especially for energy intensive industries or even for building owners, because again, most of your carbon emissions during your operations will come only from the energy use. Okay, let's move on. So how do we decarbonize, especially for the environment, since that's our topic today? To start with, this gives you an indication, as again, I don't trust all of these numbers. Honestly, I always keep the reference because you would see different numbers in different sites. So as per the data in 2018 from Architecture 2030, the global emissions by sector, if you look at only building operations, they account for 28%. And then if we look at building materials and construction, is 11%. So there's two important stages of any building life cycle: construction, design and construction, where it would have certain emissions, and then you have also the building operation stage. So the question is, how do you achieve net zero? So let's look at the life cycle. So this just shows a life cycle of a normal building, and how do we move from the standard conventional buildings that we have today to a net zero carbon buildings. So this shows the baseline, which includes the operational carbon and the embedded carbon. So what we need to do to achieve that net zero is, first, we need to reduce our energy demand by utilization of energy efficiency measures. And then we also need to have on-site renewable energy. Then we move to 100% on-site, or even using some off-site renewable energy, and we import some of the renewable energy until we reach into a net zero carbon building. And in general, when we talk about net zero, we talk about 90% of reduction and 10% in residual emissions that can be offsetted through carbon credits. So it's really important when we talk about buildings that we distinguish between, for example, buildings that are still in design and construction, and we have a lot of the embedded carbon, versus buildings that are in operations. And you could see that the majority is in the operations stage. More than 70% of the emissions from the building will be in the operational stage. So to move on now, energy, since energy is one of the important, or the majority of the carbon emissions for a building through its life cycle, especially the operational emissions. Let me ask you a question. What is the cleanest energy? Like, let's hear some of your inputs and feedback and comments. What is the cleanest energy?
I'll tell you some answers so far, but before that, we have one question on what is meant by off-site energy, and another question. Oh, or maybe you can attend to this so I don't confuse you, and then I'll take you to the other question and to the answers for your question.
Sure. So when we talk about off-site energy, it's a renewable source. For example, I mean, even though that case is not applicable as of today in the UAE because we don't know where the energy is coming from. But for example, if we decide that we're gonna take renewable energy from a solar plant, like Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park or whatever, and you know exactly that your energy is only coming from that solar project. Another way is to actually buy renewable energy certificates, which is renewable energy credits that are certified by a third party that's utilized for offsetting your energy usage. So off-site renewables is any renewables that is not installed on your building or on your site, and that's how you distinguish between the two. Those off-site renewables could be either a source of a solar plant that you know and you're taking your energy from, or through a purchase of renewable energy certificates. I hope that answers the questions.
The other question is, as part of Green Building Drive, is there any specific steps for made in UAE products related to construction? So I guess more of how materials are related to construction in the Green Building Drive.
Okay, so if we look at the green building codes and the way they're structured, whether it's Istidam or Safat or whatever, they always refer to, or they always separate or categorize the building impact into certain categories. Some of it will include cover energy performance, water performance, material usage, thermal comfort or comfort levels in general. So if we take a deeper look, do the current green codes relate to net zero or carbon emissions reduction? No, unfortunately. So they were made to move the buildings from a standard building into a greener buildings. But even some of these codes need to be revamped. In my opinion, they need to be revamped to align with the new targets that are set globally to achieve net zero by 2050. So yes, all the green building codes would have minimum energy performance requirements. For example, what is your kilowatt hour? We'll come to that later on. So you need to do an energy model. You need to utilize energy efficient equipment. You need to reduce your lighting power demands. You need to have a metering system. You need to have automation system, but it doesn't really tell you that this is your, you need to achieve this. So the minimum performance could be very low compared to what needs to be achieved to move to a net zero building. So there's a lot of research going on how do we revamp those green building codes into something much better aligned with net zero. Because also the way the green building codes are structured, that they keep let's say that there will be very, very minimum requirements, and then you will have the optional improvements or the optional advancements of your performance. So again, when we look at energy, we need much more stringent requirements, honestly, that's my opinion as well, because the current building codes do not align with the net zero targets. Of course, it could vary from case to case, but they do not align, unfortunately. You need to push further for higher aggressive targets as well and higher requirements. But of course, following a green building code is much better than the standard old conventional design.
So for your question, what is the cleanest energy? We have a couple mentioning solar or sunlight energy. We have a mention of electrical. Our chairman, Mr. Khalid, said energy efficiency is the cleanest energy. And then we have energy that is not used is the cleanest energy. And we have also a mention of solar, wind, hydro, and an interesting terminology. Our chairman, maybe he can elaborate on that. He says it's called wheeling. I think he refers to the off-site energy. Maybe he can clarify that. And that we need to introduce it to the UAE. So,
Very nice. So to start with, again, I like that there's a bit of difference in the way we look at the cleanest energy, but definitely it's the energy that you don't use and such energy efficiency, because any energy that you use would have an environmental impact, would not be clean 100%. Manufacturing renewable energy, transporting the panels or the system components into your site, constructing your solar plants, using your solar plants will all have an environmental impact and associated carbon emissions. So, and that applies to all other technologies, be it wind, be it hydrogen. So, going into reducing your demand as much as possible, plus improving the energy efficiency as best as possible, is always going to be the first top priority for any energy strategy. So, Engineer Khalid, would you be able to provide more input on the wheeling part that you've mentioned? I would like to know more about it as well.
Yeah, well, as you rightly said, most of the energy consumed is in buildings, and in UAE, most of the energy consuming buildings are the towers, where we do not have enough space to put any renewables, solar or whatever. So the wheeling concept is basically exactly what you said, where we can install a solar farm, whether on the hangars of Jabal Ali or on a farm anywhere, and then connect it to the grid and tell DEWA that, this energy generated here is for Tower ABC and Sheikh Zayed Road, for example. So they will do the netting, whatever that farm produce and generates into the grid is deducted from the energy consumption of that particular building. It's the wheeling. We've been trying to introduce it, but to the UAE, but somehow we haven't succeeded. But still, I believe it will be a very powerful tool, as you said, to reduce the consumption and increase the share of the renewables in energy efficiency.
100%. So thank you so much for the elaboration, Jane Khad. You're absolutely right, because in many cases, distributed renewable energy or on-site energy may not be possible due to limitations in space, due to other limitations maybe. And then for that, you need to actually find alternative sources that could be purchased through the grid. One of them is what Engineer Khalid had mentioned. There's also some good practices that happen around the world, where even EVs are being used, like electric vehicles, for storage of energy, solar energy in the morning, and then at night this can be fed through the grid. So there's so many things that are happening, but unfortunately here they're still not applied because of policy and regulations gap. So we hope that also, Jay Khalid, that inshallah, post COP28, I think one of the major enablers for the net zero movement is policy and regulations change, and hopefully through those changes, maybe a new concept like wheeling or net metering or purchase of power from multiple other would be an option also through DEWA or other utility and grid providers. Thank you for the input. So and that's why whenever we talk about energy transition, we always say, like, a lot of the practice that we see in the market, that many organizations or many building owners, they jump into solar, but renewable energy should be the last step in any energy strategy, because you should first exhaust all of your energy demand and energy efficiency improvements before you go into installing renewables. Renewables will always have an impact, but for example, demand reduction would not have an impact. When I'm talking about impact, I'm talking about environmental impact, economical impact, and even social impact. I'll give you an example. For example, villas, there's a lot of concerns for installing solar panels on the roof because of privacy invasion during cleaning. For example, if laborers need to go to the roof all the time, or to the solar carport, then that could actually invade the privacy of the families. And given the culture here, this might not be welcomed by especially the Emirati housing or the Emirati residents or locals. So it's really important that when we look at energy, we always look at how do we analyze it, how do we conserve, how do we reduce the demand, how do we improve our energy efficiency, and how do we even enable that kind of time of use management. And that's would be more on a city level or a country level, and then we look at renewable energy. And that's actually lead me to a question here. Does any of you have in your organization, have you established any energy efficiency guidelines or minimum requirements for your energy demand, for example, for design of buildings, for operations? Is that something that you've already set somewhere or in progress, or it's the first time you're hearing about it? If you can share in the chat, this would be really helpful so that we know we also share best practices that are happening around. So usually an energy strategy for any organization would have these elements mentioned, studied, and also put in terms of priorities. Anyone would like to? Okay, maybe later.
We don't
so
have
when it comes
yet.
Okay, that's fine. So if this is sort of a known thing, then why it's not happening? So that's what are the challenges. I think we discussed one of the challenges along with Engineer Khaled, so which is the market and the policies. And usually energy transition requires you have financial, you have organizational changes, you have market, and you have technology. So some of the challenges are, for example, management commitment, lack of expertise, whether it's technical, legal, or commercial, cost of these systems, be it CapEx or OpEx, not engaging the right stakeholders or not getting approval and buy-in from the right stakeholders. One important stakeholder is the user of the building. So if you keep on investing in high efficiency design, high efficiency systems, and at the end your operator, for example, comes and changes the set points for your BMS, then everything that you have paid for is goes in vain because you have a lot of energy wastage. Similarly, especially in residential houses and apartments, even if you have the best system, but you are turning the lights all the time or the AC all the time, even when it's not needed, even when there's no one there in the house, that also relates to the behavioral changes that need to be made. So stakeholders engagement is something really important, and in many cases there is a lack of awareness, lack of engagement. Market and policy is another major enabler and a challenge. And then of course design, because it's still a lot of technologies, for example, hydrogen, even solar in some cases, they need a lot of improvements in terms of how do you design it, how do you select it, and how do you ensure that it performs well during the lifetime of your building. So I'm going to get into one topic because, as I said, this topic is really huge. I was thinking whether I should look at design or construction or operations. Okay, let's pick one area, and then hopefully, inshallah, in the next sessions, we can actually go into more details about other elements. So I'm going to focus on two things, or let's say the most important element for me is energy saving retrofits for existing, or how do you manage your energy transition for existing buildings and during operations. So let's start with the small, or the first step, which is understanding your building energy performance and how do you measure whether your building is performing well or not. The first step is actually to do an analysis of your utility bill and to benchmark your property against other similar properties. It's an important benchmark is energy use index, which is a metric used to measure the energy consumption of a building or facility in relation to size or its function. This is an example. Here, for example, this is an office building that is actually with an EUI, which is kilowatts hour per square meter per year of 280. And when we compare this building with the UAE average, it's 230. We see a potential of 18% improvement, or let's say lack of performance. And then we have for the UAE sustainable buildings, we're taking here DEWA sustainable building, which was newly constructed. It's at 112. And then if we look at a near zero, here we're not even talking about net zero. If we look at near zero building, it would have 90 kilowatt hour per square meter per year. So you could see how much improvements you need to make to reach to a certain level. So this office, for example, needs to improve its performance by 18% just to be aligned with the average performance, which indicates major wastages, major design issues or construction issues or even operations. And then you have also, if you want to push it further, and maybe this could be an important KPI to keep for all of your buildings and also for your design of new buildings. Another important thing is to understand this: how is this electricity being utilized? How is it distributed? What systems you have in the building? And what is the what is the allocation or contribution from each of the systems. So you have, for example, again, the breakdown here, you can see the chillers, chilled water pumps, fresh air handling units, fan coil-ins, lighting, and other loads. So this gives you also an indication of which systems you want to focus more. So a common example is in many of the sites, you would see that the owners or the building designers or even the operators would go and would actually change the lights, and then they might not see that performance improvements reflected in the overall bill, because light could be a small fraction of it. It could be, in this case, it's 25%. In other projects, could be even 15 or 10%. So it all depends on your energy breakdown and what systems are using which, how much of your total bill or total energy. So these are just some, I usually don't like to talk about measures, but I just kept this here just for you to understand that you could do lighting upgrades, HVAC optimization, you could work on your building automation, building envelope improvements, installation of energy management software, or even raising awareness for your client, for your operators and your building occupants. So one important, I felt like there was one important element that we discussed today is the energy saving solution. So even though, let's say you've done the analysis, you feel that your performance is low, you want to improve, but you don't have the expertise or you don't know how to start. So one interesting model, which has been actually, it's very common right now. I don't know how many people know about it. Maybe let's ask how many know and how many don't know, so I won't have to spend a lot of time on it. But it's the energy saving performance contracting, which is a low risk method of financing and also delivering energy efficiency improvements. Usually an energy service company called ESCO. So if you heard about the ESCOs, I'm sure most of the people here would know this. They deliver these turnkey projects, which include 3 phases. The first phase is energy assessment and planning. Second is energy efficiency measures construction, which is more of a normal EPC project, and then measurements and verification, including the maintenance of the EEMs or the energy efficiency measures. This just gives you a sort of an understanding of how the process works. So the first step, the ESCO would come, or maybe an energy auditing company. It depends on how you want to take this forward. Then you will have to establish your energy committee. They will do some measurements, analysis, identify possible energy saving measures, and then provide a techno-commercial analysis along with the audit report. Once this audit report is reviewed by the building owner, approved, and then an agreement on the project financing. I'm gonna share 2 slides as well on project financing just to give you an idea about it. And then this project moved into the second stage or second phase of implementation, which is a normal construction. For example, if one of the measures is lighting replacement, then lighting redesign would happen during this stage, plus BOQ, plus purchasing, BOQ validation, purchasing of the lights, installing them on site, and also commissioning and acceptance. Similarly for chiller replacement or any other measure. Lastly is measurement and verification, which usually starts at the audit stage and it continues through the other through the EM's implementations. And this includes the development of the plan, M&V, measurement and verification plan, maintenance for the contract period, and also periodic measurement and verification depending on the contract itself. So if you have any questions, maybe we can go through them later on, but just to give you a bit of an idea of the models that are, maybe you've heard also about these models. So the 2 models are the shared saving or the guaranteed saving. The main differentiator is in the shared saving model, the owner doesn't pay for the project, the ESCO pays, and then they get their investment repaid during the post-retrofit. The second model is guaranteed savings, because a lot of building owners might want to do it, might have the budget, but they might be afraid that or concerned that they might not achieve the savings. So by engaging with a specialized firm, then you can actually guarantee that whatever you're paying for is whatever you're going to get. And post-retrofit, you can take all the savings compared to the shared saving where you only take a fraction of the savings. Okay, any questions before we move, I think, to the last section? Any questions on the energy saving retrofits?
We have
for
one.
Existing buildings?
Yes.
So,
The question is DWA's benchmarking based on built area only?
DWA's benchmarking for the homes, or is it for the organizations? Is it what you receive in the bill? Just for me to understand. what benchmarking?
Sorry, regarding the benchmarking source you showed, it says DEWA is the source. And as far as I know, DEWA builds its benchmarking based on
This one?
area.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is based on published data on the new DEWA sustainable building. So yes, it will be built on the built-up area, and it's an office building. So we're comparing here an office to an office. I hope that's...
Yes. I want to note here that, energy consumption is not only related to the built-up area. It's got many factors like the weather conditions, the activities, the occupancy, and this sort of thing. And in that regard, EGBC now is in the process of establishing a benchmark which takes into account all the other factors. So this is to inform our members that we are taking that initiative, and we will be forming a committee, which Mona, I would love that Farnek can be part of it, to build that benchmarking for the UAE.
Thank you so much, Jean, because it's really important. Usually we have this challenge. We either go into ASHRAE 100, which also take into occupancy different weather, climate conditions or climate regions, plus occupancy, plus operating hours, and take also a number from there. But as you said, like these are all international numbers, or numbers that are there publicly available, like the one I shared here. But to do a proper benchmarking, then definitely you need all the other factors that you mentioned. I would love to be part of that group, and it's really important for the market as well. I think that's something that we've been... Emirates Green Building Council have published a couple of benchmarks, I think, for schools and hotels. Thank you so much for those efforts, because now we use those numbers for the UAE, and I would be loving to be part of the office or the other commercial buildings or residential buildings benchmarking as well. Thank you for bringing this up. Okay, so any other questions, Lana, or should we move on? Still have a few slides, so I don't want to... So another important thing, even though here I'm talking about specific projects and how you do it, but then what's really important is how do you have an approach for energy enhancement and energy efficiency. An approach that does not only focus on projects, does not only focus on materials, but it focuses on everything, like a holistic strategy that includes people, includes operations, processes, and also technology integration. So one important element is to actually move away from only doing initiatives and projects to a holistic energy management system to be adopted for any organization or for any building owner. And that's the only way that we ensure that there's a continuous improvement rather than a few initiatives taken by some of the stakeholders. So it should be an organization level. And one of the best processes out there is the ISO 50001, which is based on the Plan, Do, Check, Act management process, which should be adopted by most of the organizations if they want to make real change into their energy transition. And this starts with having a proper energy policy, planning your energy, implementing various measures, checking on a periodic basis to ensure, and then even these results are managed are reviewed by the management, and you have a proper system for monitoring, measurements, and analysis. I just thought of sharing it because I think it's an important element that we move away from specific energy projects into a holistic energy management system. One important element of energy, and that's what we're doing here also in Farnek, is to have a continuous monitoring and energy optimization, and that can be only done through integration of energy management systems and optimization systems that provides data, daily, monthly, yearly analysis linked with KPIs, and also help you in measuring your performance all the time. This is another example of how these tools can be used for portfolio management. If you have multiple buildings using the kilowatt hour per square meter per year within the same geographic region, within the same occupancy level, how do you actually adjust and normalize those consumptions and enable the performance comparison to drive efficiencies and also to identify issues in operations and also energy wastages. Then for benchmarking, so also something that we do, especially for our some of our clients in the hotels, is that we do peer benchmarking. We compare them to others in the market, and we also do internal benchmarking, which is basically benchmarking the facility against its performance in previous years, previous months, etc. And then this just shows you some of the data. And based on this data, for example, you understand July, August, September should be higher because the weather is higher. But then what about the occupancy integration? How do you normalize, or how does that occupancy change had reflected in the energy performance? So this is just something that just gives you a bit of understanding of how visualization your data, having the right systems and the analysis help you in identifying opportunities, and also opportunities for improvement, and also changes, like requirements for changes in policies, procedures, or even stakeholder engagement plans. So just to end up with a few case studies. So we do continuous optimization through our tools, through our energy experts as well. One example is for Farnek, where we last year we've implemented what we call no-cost optimization measures, and we were able to achieve savings of 460K for kilowatts hour, and also avoiding of emissions of 193,000. And this should be continuous for each and every organization. Honestly, few things that we do with our clients, like integrated energy management with operations as part of our FM contracts, which Khalifa and Expo are some examples. And then also in terms of retrofits, in the shared saving model. So we have implemented a few projects. This is one of the examples that we have worked with some of our clients that we've worked with Sonder. And then also energy audit is always an important element in any energy strategy. And it's actually the starting point for you to understand where you stand in terms of energy performance, what are the opportunities out there, how do you plan your actions, and how do you also set specific targets for your buildings. And that's it. Again, my details, just in case if you want to contact me later on for any questions. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please go ahead. Maybe I'll keep this here if anyone want to take a note of it. So Lana, we can open the floor for questions. I think it's already 12, so I don't want to
Almost.
I don't want to take
but it
more
was really interesting, especially for me, the idea of how to compare and make sure that you're comparing fairly between the different buildings. So if anyone has a question or would like to give us some input, just raise your hand. I'll give you mic access.
Please feel free. This is a good platform to exchange knowledge, experience, ideas, inspirations.
And just to note that we will be sharing this presentation. It's going to be recorded in video format, as we do for all the technical workshops on our website. So everyone can continuously keep on learning and go back to whatever information they need. So Mr. Khalid, go ahead.
Yes. I want to thank Munda for sharing her wealth of information and insight into the energy efficiency business. It's a very, very important part. And we all know that the biggest challenge in energy efficiency retrofits is the financing. So unfortunately, the financial institutions still not ready to finance energy efficiency projects, although we have Al-Ittihad ISCO that is doing it, but mainly for governmental buildings. So there's a lot of work to be done. And as we say at EGBC, we are the lonely ones. With all our members together, we can make some impact. And we need everybody to start advocating energy efficiency and work through EGBC to get our voice to the concerned authorities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay Khalid, for sharing this. I agree with you. There's still a few gaps in the market. Financing is one major element of this gap, or one major gap. And I hope that through EGBC, we could actually bring change into the market, because the opportunities are there, the knowledge is there, the expertise are there. It's just about the policies and the mechanisms, financial mechanisms to drive and accelerate this transition, inshallah.
So next we have Samiullah. I gave you mic access. Feel free to ask your questions, please.
Samiullah is a good friend, so
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, EGP,
this
for
whole
organizing this
energy.
event.
Yes.
And Muna for the wonderful presentation. Very impressive. Enjoyed it. Very knowledgeable. A couple of things which I wanted to ask is that we are, as a developer and as a person who's operating multiple buildings, we do a lot of experiments in terms of retrofit and energy efficiency. How can we collaborate with Farnek in participating in these experimental initiatives? So we have at least 5 to 6 experiments going on continuously at any point of time. And we'd like to know if Farnek collaborates with organizations to be part of the experiment. And second thing is Farnek was among the first people to publish their net zero path. And I just wanted to know if after you have taken over, has that path changed? Has it become faster? How is the path now?
Okay, thank you so much, Samila. So the two questions. The first one, we would love to, because I really believe that without these experiments, we cannot roll out new technologies and also new concepts. So as myself as an energy advocate and also as Farnek, we've always been adopting innovations along the way. So definitely finding these innovations, collaborating with the providers, collaborating with other members of the community to validate some of them is really important for us. So I would be loving to know more about these experiments. Maybe we can take this offline. We can have a meeting to discuss it. I know that since I've joined, we haven't had the chance to do that kind of discussions. I think it wasn't picked up since the last time you had discussed with me. So let's do it, inshallah, and we'll take it from there. Now, for the second point with regards to Farnek new commitment. So we have, as you said, we have committed to net zero. I think it was 3 years ago, and we've been doing a lot in terms of decarbonization. I only shared here about energy and Farnek Village, what we've achieved this year, but we also did a lot with regards to fuel transport optimization, adopting biofuels, and we have coupled also the supplier chain or green supplier programs for engaging with our suppliers. And we have a couple of projects that we've been working on that inshallah you'll be hearing about soon. But one important thing is that right now, I'll be very frank, because we have committed to SBTI, which has a totally different set of requirements and guidelines. We are revamping our decarbonization plans as per SBTI. So one of the things that we're accelerating and pushing is our energy optimization. Last year we've done a lot in terms of optimization, but this year we're going for a full retrofit for most of our camps and the buildings we own. So that's I think it's going to be a major improvement, or let's say a major step in our decarbonization plans. At the same time, we are revamping our plan to submit decarbonization or net zero targets and plans to SBTI, hopefully within this year, inshallah. So I think what's really important, and I like to be frank always, that no company has achieved net zero. No company knows how to achieve net zero. It's all going to be experimenting and learning and sharing from with each other. It's a journey. We know it's a journey. We're open to improvements. We're open to developments. We like to adapt and accelerate our steps. But alhamdulillah, we have commitment from the management. We have innovations along the way. And I think we have a strong ecosystem here in the market through our clients and our partners as well, and we can move forward. Not us. We don't want to be only the first runners. We would like to actually create that impact. I like what Engineer Khalid like, that the movement itself. We want to be part, an active element, an active, engaging member of that movement, and so that we all become net zero. Because we cannot be net zero alone unless my clients and my suppliers and everyone in my ecosystem are actually net zero. And that's why we're collaborating a lot. We're working with everyone, and we're pushing our boundaries internally as well. I hope that answers your question.
Net zero plan has been modified, is it, from what you published?
It will be, yes. Yes, okay. Correct. Because now we're aligning with the Science-Based Targets Initiative. We did the commitment in December, and now we have 24 months to submit our targets and our updated decarbonization plan. But at the same time, we have projects that we're implementing this year. We already got the approval from the management in terms of retrofits, and we're starting, inshallah, to roll out these projects soon, inshallah.
One of the things which you mentioned multiple times is your labor camp and the work which you've done.
Yes.
We also operate multiple labor camps, so we're very keen on what you have done there. One aspect which has been bothering me is in the process of energy efficiency, are we affecting air quality, especially when we have a number of people staying together in a particular room? The CO2 levels in that particular room during the night normally shoots up substantially. And in most cases, we use window AC. Have you done anything on air quality in this front in the labor camps on measuring the air quality in the room? And what is the impact?
That's an interesting question, Engineer Samillah. So I agree with you. Air quality is an important element. We, as part of our audit, we've done the air quality measurements and testing, and we usually do what is required from DM when it comes to measuring the air quality in such spaces. So what's something we've noticed, and I think that's also something we internally, is for accommodations, labor accommodations, unfortunately, there's no specific requirements from the municipality. And even though Ash has specific standards when it comes to local compliances, those buildings, as far as we know, that there's no set specific standard or criteria. So what we're doing here, we're actually improving on the air quality. At the same time, we would hope to work together with partners, with EGBC, to look at these camps and to study what's the conditions of quality. Because as you said, like most of the camps, our Farnek village is a newly built camp, so we don't have that issue with that camp because we have a fresh air unit. It was designed properly. We took air quality into consideration, especially when it comes to fresh air and CO2 levels. But if you look at the older camps, which mostly were buildings that we bought, we did not design or construct ourselves, there's a challenge there, which are also supplied by vendor units. So we are going step by step, especially when you want to upgrade an existing building to something that's much more better. That needs a process. So we're still in the process, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. But you raised a very valid point, which is how do we balance between energy efficiency and comfort levels? There should not be a compromise. That's my frank answer. How do you do it and implement it? That's a different story. Mm-hmm. But you should not compromise comfort levels for energy. That's not the right way of doing it.
Thank you, Samiullah. Always really interesting questions. And
difficult, challenging questions. Thank you, Samiullah.
So we have
but
Jason.
You raised very valid.
Sorry to keep you waiting, Jason. I think you had a question. I gave you mic access. Please go ahead. And sorry if we're over time. Feel free to leave. So go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for this beautiful and knowledgeable session, Muna. Thanks for that. Really congratulate for that. I have no technical question. I have no technical question. I want to ask you only, there will be any more session regarding this topic in the future?
I wish. That's something EGBC, Ilana, maybe we could arrange for a couple of other sessions, inshallah, on the same topics.
Sure. Yeah, we can discuss that.
It's a huge topic, as they say. So maybe we could break it down into a series and maybe we can engage even other speakers. I would love to be well if there's another chance to speak.
So far it is not decided, right?
From Emirates GBC or Emirates Green Buildings Council, I cannot actually comment, Lana.
Yeah, so we'll look into that because usually these are part what you're listening to now is part of our technical workshops. And we do that monthly with different members each month to give a platform for everyone to share their knowledge. But if a particular topic is found to be more crucial to some members more than others, we can always look into integrating it within a series, as mentioned. So I'll discuss that internally and with Muna and share with you as members what we've decided, inshallah.
Okay,
Meanwhile,
fine.
if you
Thanks.
have any questions, Jason, feel free to email me. We can sit together, go through your queries. I would be more
Sure.
than happy to share our knowledge
Yeah,
as well as experience.
yeah, sure. I have noted already your mobile number and email ID. Sure, I will be sending emails.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, or can we? So thank you so much for all the audience. Thank you, Lana, and the Emirates Green Building Council.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Engineer Khalid, for coming and joining it. It's really great. It's my first time being a speaker here, but I really enjoyed it, and I hope that I was able to share some important and add to some of the knowledge and experience of everyone else here.
You did. Thank you so much. And thank you to our attendees. We'll be sharing this, as mentioned, on our website. And if you have any questions, Mona will always
Thank you,
be
everyone.
here.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.